And good evening, everyone. I hope you have had a nice weekend so far, and hope you'll have a nice weekend for the remainder of it. I am Lynx from Norway, one half of Hearth of Europa, who can't speak, obviously.
It do be like that sometimes. Hello, yes, I am Katrina, other half of Hearth of Europa, and will I be able to speak much longer? I don't know. The back of my throat is feeling like sore, like not scratchy, but like it was swollen today. So I better not speak much in between now and the next show. But yeah, would just like to thank I Agree for donating a diamond just now. Looking forward to this rounding off the weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is yeah, rounding off the weekend the Welsh way.
Yeah. Today
Gonna teach you
yeah,
how to do St. David's Day like a Welsh.
Yeah, I could use to learn that. I'd actually never heard of that day, but then I'm not very familiar with the saints, so that might be part of it. I hardly know anything of the saints we have in Norway, so I suppose that's how it is when you grow up in a post-Christian country, as I guess you could call it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Like, saints, not my area of expertise. But I know some of them. I mean, but they always like try and tell you things about, the saints of Britain. Like, oh, Saint George wasn't English; he was Turkish.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, subverting your history.
Yeah. Well, in reality, I'm not sure that we precisely know where saints like Saint George and Saint, or the idea of Saint Nicholas, for example, really originated from. There might have been an amalgamation of several people, with one person being really the most historically accurate likely candidate.
Yeah.
So yeah, but with Saint David, we do know he was native born. He was native born in Wales. He is a native born one of the patrons of the British Isles. So that is definitely a reason why Welsh people have latched onto him and, take St. David's Day to be an important day for them and a very patriotic day and stuff like that. But it's turned into something of Welshness, I think.
Yeah, well, when it's one that definitely is native born, yeah, and you also have that antagonistic relationship with the English, then it's harder to subvert.
You do. Very antagonistic relationship with the English.
Yeah.
We do seem to have spent most of the time just sort of poking our neighbours. I think we forbid the Welsh from speaking Welsh for a bit, which we maintain is their fault because Welsh is ridiculous. Why should a language have that many L's? Why does it need so much of the letter L in it? I don't get it.
Maybe they're just
absolutely ridiculous language.
Yeah, maybe they're just like lines.
Maybe they do. I mean, it's a bit like Gaelic or Gaelic, however you want to pronounce that. In that it likes to have a word being spelt totally different to how you'd ever assume it would be pronounced in a lot of cases. Although Gaelic's worst for it. Gaelic can have a whole flipping word of what looks to be multiple syllables, and then it's pronounced as about 2 or something.
Yeah. But
they just love the concept.
Yeah. when it comes to forbidding a language, we have sort of a similar situation with the Sami in Norway, because there was an effort to make them Norwegians back in the day, in particular in the 1800s. And that was straight after we had regained our independence. So I sort of get it, because they wanted a unified nation. Because in many ways they had to create a nation from scratch. So I suppose they thought having a diaspora might not be the best thing, you know. So I don't actually think
no,
it was.
it is true. It's true.
I don't think it was malicious in that sense, and in any way, the sensibilities was quite different than they are now. But it's held against us Norwegians now, to the point where it's basically Sami supremacy up in the northern counties.
Yeah.
They're actually supposed to have veto rights on decision makings up there now. Ironically, most Sami live in Oslo, so it's a bit ridiculous. But
Oh dear.
yeah, anyway, however you turn that situation, Norwegians and Samis have lived side by side for hundreds of years. So I do think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup. So, but you know, it's not just the English who have those sort of fights with their neighbors. So, so yeah. And Euphemia
It
Signe,
is true.
good evening. And Lady C, Dam Dummy, Sparky, I agree.
Hey.
Nullas, of course.
Hello.
And I've seen White Healing over on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And the Paradox, I think I almost forgot the Paradox. We
Can't forget the Paradox.
Oh, definitely not.
Has a cool name.
Yeah. And hopefully the brew is ready for our first story.
Indeed. Hopefully, indeed. So yeah, the story of St. David. Now, I haven't recorded this one, so going to read it live. And this is the main act which St. David is primarily famous for, which led to a certain custom that happens in Wales on St. David's Day. Swords clashed as the men of Wales fought for hours to protect their land from the Saxon invaders. But despite their efforts, the Welsh were slowly losing. In the heat of the battle, it was difficult to tell friend from foe. The fact that both sides wore similar clothing made the fight all the more confusing. A monk noticed that this was becoming a grave problem. As the Welsh lost more and more ground, the monk cried out to them, "Welshmen, you must mark yourselves so that you can better tell who is Saxon and who is Welsh." The monk plucked a leek plant from the ground and continued, "Here, wear these, so you will know that any soldier who does not have a leek is your enemy." Some of the soldiers thought that this was a rather odd idea, but the monk was one of God's men, so they went along with it. Soon every Welsh soldier was wearing a leek on his helmet. They attacked the invaders, and before long, the Welsh had won the battle. The monk who came up with the idea of wearing a leek was named David. David died on March 1st. After he died, the Catholic Church made him a saint. David, Dewi Sant in Welsh, is the patron saint of Wales, and March 1st, his feast day, is celebrated as a patriotic and cultural festival by the Welsh in Wales and around the world. The leek is the national flower of Wales. Welsh people all over the world proudly wear the stalk, flower, or bit of leaf from a leek plant on March 1st. The leek has a flower much like a daffodil, which is quite a bit easier to find around the world in March, so many use daffodils instead. That's just one of the many stories about St. David. No one's quite sure if it's true. There are many stories about the man. It is also said that he once rose a youth from the dead, and milestones during his life were marked by the appearance of springs of water. David was made archbishop. The story of that day is that when the decision was being made as to whether David was to be archbishop, a great crowd gathered. When David stood up to speak, one of the congregation shouted, "We won't be able to see or hear him." At that instant, the ground rose till everyone could see and hear David. So yeah, that is the story of St. David and why Welsh people are wearing leeks / daffodils on St. David's Day. I don't know, I'd rather wear the daffodil. I'd rather wear the daffodil. You can't see them, but you could smell them. A faint hue of onion. Yes. Indeed. Like, I feel like the enemy isn't killing us efficiently enough. Okay, but they were killing each other because they couldn't see who was Welsh. So I guess that is why the enemy battalion needed something. They needed something to distinguish themselves, because then it would be only the enemy that killed them, not themselves. But yeah. Yeah, similar theme in decorating helmets used by Pratchett in Night Watch. I can't remember what was that off the top of my head.
So it's like
It's been a long time since I read Night Watch.
it's like early camouflage.
Yes, early camouflage. Trying to fight the Welsh behind in a leek field, just covered in leeks.
Yeah. Just try not to get eaten or something.
Indeed. Just like trying to hide in a leek field, rabbit coming along, trying to munch on your helmet decorations.
Yeah, the foragers are coming.
Lol, someone referring to the Sami as the salami people. Salami people. The salami people are the Germans. The Germans love salami.
In Iran, there's a general of that organization, the one who was killed last year, the same organization, and he is named Salami. I could not believe my eyes.
Salami.
General Salami.
General Salami?
Yes.
What, from an Islamic country?
Yeah. The question is he halal?
The face when your surname Haram.
Yeah.
Oh dear. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is generally why Welsh people will wear daffodils on St. David's Day, because they look kinda like a leek flower. I didn't even know leeks had flowers. Honestly. I don't know.
Well, they do grow out of the ground, so most things
they
that do end up getting flowers.
Yeah, because courgettes have flowers, and you can eat those.
Mm-hmm.
Neat courgette flowers. Very nice, actually.
Yeah, broccoli is basically a flower tree. All of those green
Yes.
stuff, that is actually flowers.
No,
But
I've seen it go like yellow or like kind of bloom.
mm-hmm. So the trick with harvesting them is to take them before they grow too large and too mature. I did try my hands on broccoli one year, but it didn't go very well. But I guess it wasn't the best place for them.
Oh
So
no.
practice make perfect,
Yeah.
I suppose.
By the way, today's stream, Talking of Vegetables, is dedicated to everyone affected by the shortage of leeks.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a shortage of leeks. It's been a terrible tragedy. There's no leeks. Having to get leeks from Turkey.
But
Turning up not fresh Turkish leeks.
How many leeks have been thrown away?
Who knows how many leeks have been thrown away? Apparently there was a bad leek harvest.
Ah.
But I saw leeks in a Lidl just today. I was
Mm-hmm.
going shopping and I saw leeks.
Yeah.
No, British leeks as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on, but apparently there's had to be leeks imported into Wales. Seems a bit suspicious to me.
Yeah, in these extraordinary times, I've seen quite a few hair raising stuff when it comes to supposed food shortage. Right now, the price of beef in the US has, at least in places, gone up tremendously. And I think there's some quota on milk or something. While the farmers have to pour out gallons of milk. So it's not that the farmers don't have it, but for some reason it don't get to the consumer. And the same thing was with leeks over there, or onions last year, where the farmers had everything the customers needed, but it wasn't distributed. So I'm a bit skeptical.
I saw those. I saw those like big piles of surplus food and stuff in America. It was almost like how bad it was with the butter mountains with the EU.
Mm-hmm.
In like I think the 70s and 80s it was. It was really shocking. The report I read in the Independent though did mention a specific effect on the leek harvest this year. There had been problems with it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's one of those things. Yeah. F in the chat for Wales, guys, and their lack of leaks.
Yeah.
One like on YouTube equals one pray for the leaks.
Yeah. We did have a shortage of butter a few years back over in Norway, and it ended up in total crisis because it was just before Christmas, so everyone was getting butter for the Christmas cookies. So they actually ended up importing loads of butter from Europe. So how they managed to do that, I'm not quite sure. I think they took too much milk into cheese production or something. So they didn't have enough for. Yeah. Food production in Norway is weird. It seems like
where's the milk? We put it all in the cheese.
Yeah.
It's all cheese now.
Yeah.
You want milk for your cereal? Yeah, you're gonna have to grate some cheese on that. It's the only form of milk we got now.
Sorry, Christmas cookies this year is with cheese.
Cheese biscuits.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cheese cinnamon biscuits.
It's unfortunate that the Welsh have a shortage of leeks because their main dish that they eat on St. David's Day, Cal, it uses leeks. Historically, ingredients have really tended to vary, but most commonly they're making it with lamb or beef, I imagine with the amount of sheep in Wales, that would more commonly be lamb. And then with leeks, potatoes, weeds, carrots, and other seasonal vegetables, which makes it like it sounds really quite similar to Irish stew, or depending on how well the meat is diced. Yeah, meat's normally cut into like medium-sized pieces and simmered with the vegetables in water, and then the stock's thickened with either oatmeal or flour. And then that got served without the meat and vegetables as a first course. And then the vegetables and slices of meat would then be served as the second course. But nowadays, they don't really thicken it, and they serve it as one course. In the olden days, they actually used to serve it as two things, just to spread it out. North Wales equivalent called lobscows. Meat and veg at smaller pieces. So that's reminding me a lot more of Scotch broth, maybe?
We have that as
in
well.
its current format?
We have that as well.
Oh, you have that.
Yeah, lobscouse.
What's it called?
Lobscouse.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, it's I actually quite like it when you just want something very simple for dinner.
Yeah.
When you don't necessarily want an explosion of taste in your mouth. Personally, I somewhat prefer the more plain food, but I guess I have a sensitive Scandinavian palate or something. But you know, if say I order a pizza or something and it says it is medium hot, it burns out my throat. So.
Yeah. That's like actually the opposite to me. Like I suppose like I don't have any genetics where one would presume that there would be spice tolerance. And maybe I didn't used to be actually that spice tolerant, but now I don't know if it's just like the massive influence of Indian food maybe in Britain, but I can take quite a lot of spice, and it was always annoying to me in Germany that things were not spicy enough.
Seems like my kind of place then.
Yeah.
My feet have touched German soil, but that was to and from Prague, so not a long stay, to say the least. We're just driving through, so you know, it was like, the restroom breaks, and once there was a queue, so and it literally wasn't moving for a very long time, so everyone went out of the bus and sat on the side of the road. So that was quite cozy, actually. That was a good trip.
Yeah, but like the German cuisine is like gonna be quite similar to your Scandinavian cuisine, and like it's got a few similarities to your British cuisine traditionally as well. So there's a common thread, which is like meat and potatoes, lots of them.
Yeah.
I tell you what though. Just to come back to what we were talking about, because before it goes out of my head, lobscouse reminds me of scouse. Scouse is a stew that is commonly eaten in Liverpool, the Merseyside area, and it's something that everybody knows them for, because they get the name from it. That you call people from Liverpool Scousers, and I'm just realizing now that sounds very similar to the end of lobscouse. Scouse.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because it's quite near Wales in terms of geography.
Interesting.
And you can make it as well, Carl Kennen, Kennen, or leek kål, can be made without meat but using meat stock. And there's a similar version of meatless scouse that you made when you couldn't afford any meat, or you'd eaten all the meat out of the scouse that you made.
Yeah.
So that with bread and cheese, which is quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you'd serve scouse with bread and cheese, as far as I know. Can be served with pickled beetroot, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say hi to Joel Citizen over on YouTube, our resident
Hi, Joel.
Welshman. Apparently my tablet froze up when he came to the chat, so I didn't see him. Bad tablet.
It is freezing.
Yeah.
It's trying to stop the information about the culture being broadcast.
Yeah, locking out
Shut it down.
Yeah, not allowing the Welshman to enter. new sort of
discrimination.
Discrimination and oh, what's the word? Censorship.
Yes, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe we should go over to the next story.
Yes, we should.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long one. I'm regressing to a complete Norwegian accent now, apparently. It's 17 minutes long, and then I cut out a large part, which I originally wanted in there, but that part was 10 pages long, so it might end up as a separate video, or I will make the complete version. But it is connected to St. David, in as much as it's from Geoffrey Monmouth's History of the Kings of Britain. So it's somewhat mythological, and also harkens back to one of our early shows with the Giants of Albion. Because it's the same book.
Nice.
Yeah, so this story takes place, just to give a preface, because I sort of start in the middle of the story. This is after the Romans have left Britain and taken the army with them, and the Picts and actually the Norwegians, apparently, started to harass the English. And then Constantine took the throne, but he was killed by a Pict after 10 years, and he had 3 sons, but they were all kids. And all of the noblemen went for each of the 2 youngest boys, because the eldest was given to the church, so he was supposed to be a monk. And then Vortigern, which is the story, is the protagonist, sort of. He went for the oldest one, Constance, and crowned him and put him on the throne and had him under his thumb, because he was a very kind young man, not very strong of will, but he was supposed to be a monk anyway. He'd been given as a very young child to the church, so it was definitely not raised to be a king. And then he invited Picts into Constance's court to make friends with them and have them as spies and everything, but his real plan, which he followed through on, was to have the Picts kill Constance. and they did, and Vortigern could take the throne for himself.
Uh-huh.
Do. And
Dun dun dun.
and the plot thickens. At this time, the Saxons came over. Apparently, they were the surplus of their own population, which then was sent out to get new land. Of course, it's always in a very friendly manner, but they proved very helpful to Vortigern in defending against his enemies with the Picts and Norwegians and the Islanders and everything. Vortigern ended up becoming friends with the leader, Hengist, and then marrying his daughter, which is always a stupid thing. Hengist.
Cool name.
Yeah. And he already had sons from before that, but they had children as well. And then his oldest son, he was a pure Brit. He was raised by the people and barons and everything, and managed to chase Hengist out of the country. And there is where the story will pick up. So,
Yeah, quite a lot has happened.
Yeah, I tried to manage a preface that was, just a few sentences long, but I couldn't manage. So, therefore, you get the manual version.
We can maybe write the background context in the description or something when it goes up as a story vid. But yeah.
Yeah, or just put some music and have it as text before the story starts. So
let us see what happens next.
Yeah, let's check out Vortigern. History of the Kings of Britain by Geoffrey Monmouth. Excerpts. Book 6, Chapter 15. Vortigern, after the death of his son, was again restored to the kingdom, and at the request of his wife sent messengers into Germany to Hengist with an invitation to return into Britain, but privately and with a small retinue to prevent a quarrel between the barbarians and his subjects. But Hengist, hearing that Vortimer was dead, raised an army of no less than 300,000 men, and fitting out a fleet returned with them to Britain. When Vortigern and the nobility heard of the arrival of so vast a multitude, they were immoderately incensed, and after consultation together resolved to fight them and drive them from their coasts. Hengist, being informed of their design by messengers sent from his daughter, immediately entered into deliberation what course to pursue against them. After several stratagems had been considered, he judged it most feasible to impose upon the nation by making show of peace. With this view he sent ambassadors to the king to declare to him that he had not brought so great a number of men for the purpose of either staying with him or offering any violence to the country. But the reason why he brought them was because he thought Vortimer was yet living, and that he should have occasion for them against him in case of an assault. But now, since he was no longer doubted of his being dead, he submitted himself and his people to the disposal of Vortigern, so that he might retain as many of them as he should think fit, and whomever he rejected, Hengist would allow to return back without delay to Germany. And if these terms pleased Vortigern, he desired him to appoint a time and place for their meeting, and adjusting matters according to his pleasure. When these things were represented to the king, he was mightily pleased, as being very unwilling to part with Hengist, and at last ordered his subjects and the Saxons to meet upon the calends of May, which were now very near, at the monastery of Ambrius, for the settling of the matters above mentioned. The appointment being agreed to on both sides, Hengist, with the new design of villainy in his head, ordered his soldiers to carry every one of them a long dagger under their garments, and while the conference should be held with the Britons, who would have no suspicion of them, he would give them this word of command, Nemet ura saxas, at which moment they were all to be ready to seize boldly every one his next man, and with his drawn dagger stab him. Accordingly, when they all met at the time and place appointed, and began to treat of peace, and when a fit of opportunity offered for executing his villainy, Hengist cried out, Nemet ura saxas, and at the same instant seized Vortigern and held him by his cloak. The Saxons, upon the signal given, drew their daggers, and falling upon the princes, who little suspected any such design, assassinated them to the number of 460 barons and consuls, to whose bodies St. Eldad afterward gave Christian burial not far from Caradoc, now Salisbury, in a burying place near the monastery of Ambrius, the abbot who was the founder of it. For they all came without arms, having no thought of anything but treating of peace, which gave the others a fairer opportunity of exercising their villainous design against them. But the pagans did not escape unpunished while they acted this wickedness, a great number of them being killed during the massacre of their enemies. For the Britons, taking up clubs and stones from the ground, resolutely defended themselves, and did good execution upon the traitors. Chapter 16. There was present one Eldal, consult of Gloucester, who at the sight of this treachery took up a stake which he happened to find, and with that made his defence. Every blow he gave carried death along with it, and by breaking either the head, arms, shoulder, or legs of a great many, he struck no small terror into the traitors, nor did he move from the spot before he had killed with that weapon 70 men. But being no longer able to stand his ground against such a number, he made his escape from them and retired to his own city. Many fell on both sides, but the Saxons got the victory, because the Britons, having no suspicion of treachery, came unarmed and therefore made a weaker defence. After the commission of this detestable villainy, the Saxons would not kill Vortigern, but having threatened him with death and bound him, demanded his cities and fortified places in consideration of their granting him his life. He, to secure himself, denied them nothing, and when they made him confirm his grounds with an oath, they released him from his chains, and then marched first to London, which they took, as they did afterwards York, Lincoln, and Winchester, wasting the countries through which they passed, and destroying the people, as wolves do sheep when left by their shepherds. When Vortigern saw the desolation which they made, he retired into parts of Cambria, not knowing what to do against so barbarous a people. Chapter 17. At last he had recourse to magicians for their advice, and commanded them to tell him what course to take. They advised him to build a very strong tower for his own safety, since he had lost all his other fortified places. Accordingly, he made a progress about the country to find a convenient situation, and came at last to Mount Arir, where he assembled workmen from several countries, and ordered them to build a tower. The builders, therefore, began to lay the foundation, but whatever they did one day, the earth swallowed up the next, so as to leave no appearance of their work. Vortigern, being informed of this, again consulted with his magicians concerning the cause of it, who told him that he must find out a youth that had never had a father, and kill him, and then sprinkle the stones and cement with his blood, for by those means, they said, he would have a firm foundation. Hereupon messengers were dispatched away all over the provinces to inquire out such a man. In their travels, they came to a city called afterwards Caermerdin, where they saw some young men playing before the gate, and went up to them. But being weary with their journey, they sat down in the ring to see if they could meet with what they were in quest of. Towards evening there happened on a sudden a quarrel between two of the young men, whose names were Merlin and Dabutius. In the dispute, Dabutius said to Merlin, "You fool! You presume to quarrel with me? Is there any equity in our birth? I am descended of a royal race, both on my father and mother's side. As for you, nobody knows what you are, for you have never had a father." At the words, the messengers looked earnestly upon Merlin and asked the bystander who he was. They told him it was not known who was his father, but that his mother was the daughter of the king of Demetia, and that she lived in St. Peter's Church among the nuns of that city. Chapter 18. Upon this the messengers hastened to the governor of the city, and ordered him in the king's name to send Merlin and his mother to the king. As soon as the governor understood the occasion of their message, he readily obeyed the order, and sent them to Vortigern to complete his design. When they were introduced into the king's presence, he received the mother in a very respectful manner on account of her noble birth, and began to inquire of her by what man she had conceived. "My sovereign lord," said she, "by the life of your soul and mine, I know nobody that begot him of me. Only this I know, that I was once with my companions in our chambers. There appeared to me a person in the shape of a most beautiful young man, who often embraced me eagerly in his arms and kissed me. And when he had stayed a little time, he suddenly vanished out of my sight. But many times after this he would talk with me when I sat alone, without making any visible appearance. When he had a long time haunted me in this manner, he at last lay with me several times in the shape of a man, and left me with child. And I do affirm to you, my sovereign lord, that excepting that young man, I know nobody that begot him of me." The king, full of admiration at this account, ordered Morgantius to be called, that he might satisfy him as to the possibility of what the woman had related. Morgantius, being introduced and having the whole matter repeated to him, said to Vortigern, "In the books of our philosophers, and in great many histories, I have found that several men have bad like original. For as Apuleius informs us in his book concerning the demon of Socrates, between the moon and the earth inhabit those spirits, which we will call incubuses. These are of the nature partly of men and partly of angels, and whenever they please assume human shapes, and lie with women. Perhaps one of them appeared to this woman and begot that young man of her." Chapter 19. Merlin in the meantime was attentive to all that had passed, and then approached the king and said to him, "For what reason am I and my mother introduced into your presence?" "My magicians," answered Vortigern, "advised me to seek out a man that had no father, with whose blood my building is to be sprinkled in order to make it stand." "Order your magicians," said Merlin, "to come before me, and I will convict them of a lie." The king was surprised at his words, and presently ordered the magicians to come and sit down before Merlin, who spoke to them after this manner. "Because you are ignorant of what it is that hinders the foundation of the tower, you have recommended that the shedding of my blood for cement to it, as if that would presently make it stand. But tell me now, what is there under the foundation? For something there is that will not suffer it to stand." The magicians at this began to be afraid, and made no answer. Then said Merlin, who was also called Ambrose, "I entreat your majesty would command your workmen to dig into the foundation, and you will find a pond which causes the foundation to sink." This accordingly was done, and then presently they found a pond deep underground, which had made it give way. Merlin after this went again to the magicians and said, "Tell me, ye false sycophants, what is there under the pond?" But they were silent. Then said he again to the king, "Command the pond to be drained, and at the bottom you will see 2 hollow stones, and in them 2 dragons asleep." The king made no scruple of believing him, since he had found true what he said of the pond, and therefore ordered it to be drained. Which done, he found as Merlin had said, and now was possessed with the greatest admiration of him. Nor were the rest that were present less amazed by his wisdom, thinking it to be no less than divine inspiration. Book 7. Chapter 3. As Vortigern, king of the Britons, was sitting upon the bank of the drained pond, the 2 dragons, one of which was white, the other red, came forth, and approaching one another, began a terrible fight, and cast forth fire with their breath. But the white dragon had the advantage, and made the other fly to the end of the lake. And he, for grief at his flight, renewed the assault upon his pursuer, and forced him to retire. Book 8, Chapter 1. Merlin, by delivering these and many other prophecies, caused in all that were present an admiration at the ambiguity of his expressions. But Vortigern, above all the rest, both admired and applauded the wisdom and prophetical spirit of the young man, for that age had produced none that ever talked in such a manner before him. Being therefore curious to learn his own fate, he desired the young man to tell him what he knew concerning that particular. Merlin answered, "Fly the fire of the sons of Constantine, if you are able to do it. Already they are fitting out their ships. Already they are leaving the Armorican shore. Already they are spreading out their sails to the wind. They will steer towards Britain. They will invade the Saxon nation. They will subdue that wicked people. But they will first burn you being shut up in a tower. To your own ruin did you prove a traitor to their father, and invite the Saxons into the island. You invited them for your safeguard, but they came for a punishment to you. 2 deaths instantly threaten you, nor is it easy to determine which you can best avoid. For on the one hand the Saxons shall lay waste to your country, and endeavour to kill you. On the other shall arrive the 2 brothers, Aurelius Ambrosius and Uther Pendragon, whose business will be to revenge their father's murder upon you. Seek out some refuge if you can. Tomorrow they will be on the shore of Totnes. The faces of the Saxons shall look red with blood, Hengist shall be killed, and Aurelius Ambrosius shall be crowned. He shall bring peace to the nation, he shall restore the churches, but shall die of poison. His brother Uther Pendragon shall succeed him, whose days also shall be cut short by poison. There shall be present at the commission of this treason your own issue, whom the boar of Cornwall shall devour." Accordingly, the next day arrived Aurelius Ambrosius and his brother with 10,000 men. Chapter 2. As soon as the news of his coming was divulged, the Britons, who had been dispersed by the great calamities, met together from all parts, and gaining this new accession of strength from their countrymen, displayed unusual vigour. Having assembled together the clergy, they anointed Aurelius king and paid him the customary homage. And when the people were urgent to fall upon the Saxons, he dissuaded them from it, because his desire was to pursue Vortigern first. For the treason committed against his father so very much affected him that he thought nothing done till that was first avenged. In pursuance, therefore, of this design, he marched with his army into Cambria, to the town of Genero, whither Vortigern had fled for refuge. That town was in the country of Hyrgin, upon the river Gania, in the mountain called Cloarius. As soon as Ambrosius was arrived there, bearing in mind the murder of his father and brother, he spake thus to Eldol, Duke of Gloucester: "See, most noble Duke, whether the walls of this city are able to protect Vortigern against my sheathing this sword in his bowels. He deserves to die, and you cannot, I suppose, be ignorant of his desert. O most villainous of men, whose crime deserve inexpressible tortures! First he betrayed my father Constantine, who had delivered him and his country from the inroads of the Picts. Afterwards my brother Constans, whom he made king on purpose to destroy him. Again, when his craft had usurped the crown, he introduced pagans among the natives, in order to abuse those who continued steadfast in their loyalty to me. But by the good providence of God, he unwaringly fell into the snare which he had laid for my faithful subjects. For the Saxons, when they found him out in his wickedness, drove him from the kingdom, for which nobody ought to be concerned. But this I think matter of just grief, that this odious people, whom that detestable traitor invited over, has expelled the nobility, laid waste to a fruitful country, destroyed the holy churches, and almost extinguished Christianity over the whole kingdom. Now, therefore, my countrymen, show yourselves men, first revenge yourself upon him that was the occasion of all these disasters. Then let us turn our arms against our enemies and free our country from their brutish tyranny. Immediately, therefore, they set their engines to work and labor to beat down the walls. But at last, when all other attempts failed, they had recourse to fire, which meeting with proper fuel, ceased not to rage till it had burned down the tower and Vortigern in it. Okay, so there you had the story of Vortigern and his fate.
Yes.
The title there was my own, just to sort of give a gist of the story. And also the beauties got a little fan there. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And then your autocorrect
Yeah.
said fabulous
Yeah.
instead of Debutius.
And
And then I was just like, fabulous Debutius. Which sounds like the best Asterix comic name ever.
Yeah, I didn't even see that until a couple of minutes later, so damn autocorrect. I don't really mind it if you then actively had to choose from the autocorrect, but that it just picks it for you. That's quite annoying.
That's not a word.
Yeah.
You obviously meant this.
Of course. Autocorrect always knows best. Hey, Slot. Welcome.
It autocorrects you whenever you're trying to type in. Oh.
Yeah, it does.
It was a nice story. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is actually one of the books I would like to record in whole. It seems quite interesting.
Cool.
So I won't vouch for the authenticity of it, but it's quite interesting.
Geoffrey of Monmouth was like closer to the events happening than anybody in the modern day was.
Yeah.
At least, you know. But it was interesting. The Incubi turned up, and they also obviously turn up in the story of Albion and her sisters and the first female giants coming to Britain.
Yeah. The story of the tower he wanted to build came up very early when I searched for Welsh stories. And I chose it because Merlin pops up. In Geoffrey of Monmouth's story, he then later have a hand in the conception of Arthur by Pendragon. Uther.
Uther.
Yeah, but that's the last mention of him in the Monmouth story. So it's other legends that have been more involved after that. So, you know, I did find it quite interesting that the entrance of Merlin came up related to Wales, because I didn't know that. And
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff about Merlin and Arthur related to Wales. I dare say we cover the Grail legends. A lot of stuff will definitely be linked to Wales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's because I'm not British, so I don't necessarily know all of the places and everything. So just you learn something new every day. And of course, I didn't resist a story with dragons. hence why I had to have the sparks in the background.
Yep. Everybody loves dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, the comment in the chat about if the red dragon and the white dragon have a baby, will it be a pink dragon?
Well, it does seem quite obvious that it will, but as long as it's not a rainbow dragon, I suppose it's okay. Even though I'm not a huge fan of pink.
I don't know. Depends on which gene is dominant, the red or the white, and then you got to do the little box thing like you did in the biology classes in school and work out what gene's going to be dominant. Is it going to be a pink dragon? Does it have to have is white a recessive gene?
You can take
Are
it
they
from
co-dominant?
you can take it from the biology perspective, and I can take it from the color perspective, since I do have a slight background in the arts, way back in the days.
Yeah.
But how that little story of the dragon sort of have survived in the Welsh memory is that while the white dragon gets the upper hand over the red one for a time, the red dragon ends up winning, and the red dragon is a symbol of the Welsh, so they see it as a symbol of them defeating the English. So
yes. I've heard a few stories like the white dragon is still lurking.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's kind of a balance always.
Yeah.
English or Welsh being predominant.
Yeah. Now, Vortigern asked Arthur what the battle meant, and then he goes on his 10-page long prophecy. So obviously to include that would be way too long for this show, but
absolutely.
My plan is to record that tomorrow and have that up as a separate video. And I might also have include that in the story I played tonight, so that it becomes complete, even though I start in the middle of Vortigern's story. The beginning have to be on a later date, I'm afraid. That would be a bit too much work right now.
Yeah. Preserve white dragons.
Preserve all dragons.
Preserve all the dragons, indeed. I mean,
want the dragon.
I believe the last dragon in Wales was hunted to extinction in 1653. The last wild one, anyway. But I do believe there's a rewilding program.
Cool.
About, being campaigned for.
Okay, I'm coming over and catching a dragon, and then fly back home again. Because I definitely want a dragon. I can ride it like a Targaryen or something.
Oh dear. If only dragons existed.
Oh, that would be so cool.
I would love there to be dragons.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
me too.
It'd be a world with slightly more risk of getting burned to a crisp, but dragons.
I'm a bit too curious for my own good at times, so I might end up a bit crispy, if that was the case. In particular, if they were in my area.
Crispy links.
Yeah. A bit singed. Singed in the edges. Yeah.
Singed around the ear tufts.
Yeah. Dragon lives matter, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, we have got some examples of genuine Welsh wildlife coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is a story involving a lot of animals tonight, indeed.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
By the way, chat, thinking about Welsh food, anybody like Welsh rarebit? Don't know. Anybody in the chat like that? Opinions? Because I discovered there was a bit of debate about how you make that. So yeah.
I've only eaten rabbit once, and that was in Spain, in a paella.
The thing is,
I really didn't want to eat rabbit, so I asked for a portion without rabbit. And the guy who was filling the plates, he very considerately took food from one corner of that big plate he had. But I probably ate rabbit, because there wasn't a non-rabbit paella available. So, but at least I didn't know that while I was eating. So
I have eaten rabbit, but Welsh rabbit or Welsh rarebit is not rabbit. It is quite misleading, and that's why it was renamed rarebit. It's actually a cheese on toast dish. I think one would call it, I think, in its current format, quite similar to a croque monsieur. Like, dish consisting of like hot cheese-based sauce served over slices of toasted bread. And it was called Welsh rabbit, but it was later reinterpreted as rarebit because everybody found it confusing, because they were like, what do you mean? That hasn't got any rabbit. But yeah, it varies from being like cheese on toast to making a sauce of like cheese and ale and mustard with cayenne pepper and paprika, and some people add Worcestershire sauce, and some people have a bechamel sauce. Apparently, the name came from Welsh was probably used as a pejorative or dysphemism, meaning anything substandard or vulgar, and suggesting that only people as poor and stupid as the Welsh would eat cheese and call it rabbit. Well, that the closest thing to rabbit the Welsh could afford was melted cheese on toast. Or maybe it was just calling them frugal.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of boneless birds. Which was something we had in Norway when I was a kid, which is actually a bit of elongated meatballs. So it's not birds at all. They're just called boneless birds. So it just reminded me of rabbit being rarebit. All right, Meow is hosting. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Hey!
Always good to see you. And congratulations on expecting a little one. Right, Meow?
Yay!
I'm so glad for you.
So cool.
Yeah. Finally, the family is growing. That is so good news.
Yeah. But yeah, this whole like thing is a bit of a rabbit hole, and it got a lot more complicated than just cheese on toast, possibly with leeks. Then there was ideas about an English rabbit, which involved soaking bread in wine and then toasting cheese on it, which honestly sounds weird. Sounds really weird. Like letting toasted bread absorb wine and then toasting cheese on it. And you can have it with an egg. It's called buck rabbit. You even have it in French, and it's called un Welsh, apparently. Which is kind of a funny name for it. But yeah. Yeah, Lynx's cat wants out. I was like, where'd Lynx go? And then I saw the message. The cat wants to be let out. Yeah. Grape jelly and peanut butter. Wine and cheese. Grape jelly. Yeah. American. I don't even think we put grapes in jam in Britain. I never heard of grapes in that format at all. What is grape jam? How is that? That sounds like it'd be alright to put in a jam. Although that said, they're already quite sweet, aren't they?
I think it depends on the type.
It's true.
Yeah.
No, Ferocious Chihuahua, there is no grape jelly in the UK. That's not a thing. And when we say jelly, and we don't mean the thing that goes with or on a plate. Like, yeah, we have apple jelly and we have red currant jelly. Like, there would also be like, yeah, probably there might be. I don't know if there's mint jelly in the UK, but those sort of jellies would be with meat. There would be like things to take the edge off of really greasy meat. So that's what jelly means in the context for us when we're talking about any sort of yeah, a preserve again is a slightly different thing. Because this is what we call jelly is what you call jello. Most of the time, except when you're talking about red currant jelly or apple jelly or something like that, then you're talking about a preserve specifically for going with meat.
I did read when I was researching some seeds a few years back that, you know, everyone knows the EU has too much time on their hands. So
yes.
Apparently, I haven't checked if this is still the case, but this seed company was very good to inform me that carrots are now berries. They're not root vegetables anymore, not in the EU. Do you know why?
Why?
So that people could sell carrot marmalade. Because a marmalade has to be made of berries.
But an orange is not a berry.
A carrot.
Marmalade is usually made of oranges.
Yeah, but
and an orange is not a berry.
An orange is a berry.
It's a fruit. I wouldn't call it a berry.
I haven't actually thought of that. I've always thought of fruit as berries. Because they contain the seeds and everything. But at least that was the information on this.
Is one.
That was the information from this seed company that carrots are now a berry, so that people can make carrot marmalade and sell it.
So it has to be a berry just so people can make carrot marmalade, which honestly, side note, sounds rank.
I might actually be willing to try it, but it's basically so they can label it a marmalade. So
carrot chutney sounds alright.
Yeah.
Marmalade is a sweet thing.
Yeah. As I said, the EU have too much time on their hands, so
they definitely do.
Yeah, just a little side note. That was a bit hilarious. When it comes
I never agree about apricot preserves, yeah. The Bon Maman ones. Bon Maman jams. They're pretty good. Get them in the shops in the UK now.
I usually make blueberry preserves.
Nice.
We have lots of blueberries on the property where I live, so I can get about 10 liters of them. So in a season, so
That's pretty cool.
yeah, and quite a lot. So
Mhm.
a lot of work, but it's definitely good.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, we're on jam. That's a sidetrack. Yeah.
Blueberry pie, and I do those in the season when the berries are fresh from the bushes. So
Oh man, that must be nice.
that is really nice. Everything made from scratch and everything. So
Mhm.
I do actually enjoy spending time in the kitchen. I just hate doing the dishes afterwards.
Oh yeah. Love doing the cooking. Hate doing the dishes. It's always the way.
Yeah, it
Like,
really is.
probably when I make some Welsh Barbrith cake this week, which I'm gonna tweet a recipe for that because it's a great cake and it involves tea, so
Ah,
fruit and tea. Um, so yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I like to bake, but I don't like to do the washing up,
yeah.
especially not if the mix just sticky.
I'm considering making apple cinnamon rolls this week.
Ooh, nice.
I have some homemade applesauce in the fridge, so, in the freezer, so just to thaw that out and make them like regular cinnamon rolls. So it's really, really, really good.
We made Ferocious Chihuahua hungry.
Ah, yeah, it did sort of turn into a food stream.
Little bit.
Yeah. Maybe in the
Yeah.
future, Heart of Europa will go from stories to the kitchen or something. Food edition.
Maybe I'd like to talk about food sometimes actually, because old recipes are really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And food often has really cool history surrounding it.
Yeah,
So that would be great to talk about sometime.
definitely. One New Year's Eve, I actually made a vintage recipe on what I personally tend to translate into moonshine pudding. But the correct one is moonlight pudding. So it's
Moonlight pudding.
yeah, it's not
Sounds ethereal.
well, it's not with alcohol, so moonshine doesn't quite cut it. But moonlight in Norwegian is måneskinn, moon, måne, skin, shine. At least that's where my mind goes. So that is lemon mousse actually. And I made it from scratch. The recipe was taken from the last New Year's dinner that Edward Grieg had, our famous composer. So that is an old recipe and it was really good. It took time, but it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we should tweet some of these recipes sometime.
Yeah.
Culinary heritage.
Maybe.
It's always good to maintain culinary heritage. I'm definitely going to tweet some of these Welsh recipes.
Yeah.
You can all have a go at making them.
Make a separate show.
If you want to do.
Heart of the kitchen. A heart in the kitchen.
Kitchen of Europa.
Yeah.
Half of Europa. Kitchen of Europa.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Gonna have to do a standard YouTube anonymous cookery channel and just have the hands though, if we need to demonstrate.
Yeah, and that generic music that everyone is using.
we could go like historical vibes, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Shall we have another story that doesn't
Yeah.
involve any food, that mainly just involves killer birds?
With bones.
With bones. They
Yeah.
definitely have bones.
Yeah, they do have bones, so it's not boneless birds.
That sounds like a KFC offer.
Yeah, probably. Okay, a non-culinary story with birds with bones coming up.
The origin of the Welsh. Many years ago there lived several wild tribes round the king of Persia's city, and the king's men were always annoying and harassing them, exacting a yearly heavy tribute. Now these tribes, though very brave in warfare, could not hold their own before the Persian army when sent out against them, so they paid their yearly tribute grudgingly, but took revenge whenever they could upon travellers to or from the city, robbing and killing them. At last, one of the tribesmen, a clever old chieftain, thought of a cunning plan whereby to defeat the Persians and free themselves from the yearly tribute, and this was his scheme. The wild wastes where these tribes lived were infested with large birds called roes, which were very destructive to human beings, devouring men, women, and children greedily whenever they could catch them. Such a terror were they that the tribes had to protect their village with high walls, and then they slept securely, for the roe hunted by night. This old chieftain determined to watch the birds and find out their nesting places, so he had a series of towers built, in which the watchmen could sleep securely by night. These towers were advanced in whatever direction the birds were seen to congregate by night. The observers reported that the roe could not fly, but ran very swiftly, being fleeter than any horse. At length, by watching, their nesting places were found in a sandy plain, and it was discovered that those monstrous birds stole sheep and cattle in great numbers. The chieftain then gave orders for the watchmen to keep on guard until the young birds were hatched, when they were commanded to secure 50 and bring them into the walled town. The order was carried out, and one night they secured 50 young birds, just out of the egg, and brought them to the town. The old chieftain then told off 50 skilful warriors, a man to each bird, to his son being allotted the largest bird. These warriors were ordered to feed the birds on flesh, and train them for battle. The birds grew up as tame as horses. Saddles and bridles were made for them, and they were trained and exercised just like chargers. When the next tribute day came round, the king of Persia sent his emissaries to collect the tax. But the chieftains of the tribes insulted and defied them, so that they returned to the king, who at once sent forward his army. The chieftain then marshalled his men, and 46 of the roes were drawn up in front of the army, the chief getting on the strongest bird. The remaining 4 were placed on the right flank, and ordered at a signal to advance and cut off the army should they retreat. The roes had small scales, like those of a fish, on their necks and bodies, the scales being hidden under a soft hair, except on the upper half of the neck. They had no feathers except on their wings, so they were invulnerable, except as to the eyes, for in those days the Persians only had bows and arrows and light javelins. When the Persian army advanced, the roes advanced at lightning speed and made fearful havoc, the birds murdering and trampling soldiers underfoot and beating them down with their powerful wings. In less than 2 hours, half the Persian army was slain, and the rest had escaped. The tribes returned to their walled towns, delighted with their victory. When the news of his defeat reached the king of Persia, he was wroth beyond expression, and could not sleep for rage. So the next morning he called for his magician. "What are you going to do with the birds?" asked the king. "Well, I've been thinking the matter over," replied the magician. "Cannot you destroy all of them?" "No, your majesty. I cannot destroy them, for I have not the power. But I can get rid of them in one way. For though I cannot put out life, I have the power of turning one life into some other living creature." "Well, what will you turn them into?" asked the king. I'll consider tonight, your majesty," replied the magician. "Well, mind, and be sure to do it." "Yes, I'll be sure to do it, your majesty." The next day at 10, the magician appeared before the king, who asked, "Have you considered well?" "Yes, your majesty." "Well, how are you going to act?" "Your majesty, I've thought and thought during the night, and the best thing we can do is turn all the birds into fairies." "What are fairies?" asked the king. I've planned it all out, and I hope your majesty will agree." "Oh, I'll agree, as long as they never molest us more." "Well, your majesty, I'm going to turn them into fairies, small living creatures to live in caves in the bowels of the earth, and they shall only visit people living on the earth once a year. They shall be harmless and hurt nothing. They shall be fairies, and do nothing but dance and sing, and I shall allow them to go about on the earth for 24 hours once a year, and play their antics, but they shall do no mischief." "How long are the birds to remain in this state?" asked the king. "I'll give them 2,000 years, your majesty, and at the end of that time they are to go back to birds, as they were before. And after the birds change from the fairy state back into birds, they shall never breed more, but die a natural death." So the tribes lost their birds, and the king of Persia made such fearful havoc amongst them that they decided to leave the country. They travelled, supporting themselves by robbery, until they came to a place where they built a city, and called it Troy, where they were besieged for a long time. At length the besiegers built a large caravan, with a large man's head in front. The head was all gilded with gold. When the caravan was finished, they put 150 of the best warriors inside, provided with food, and one of them had a trumpet. Then they pulled the caravan, which ran upon 8 broad wheels, up to the gates of the city, and left it there, their army being drawn up in the valley near by. It was agreed that when the caravan got inside the gates, the bugler should blow 3 loud blasts to warn the army, who would immediately advance into the city. The men on the ramparts saw this curious caravan, and they began wondering what it was, and for 2 or 3 days they left it alone. At last an old chieftain said, "It must be their food." On the 3rd day they opened the gates, and detaching the ropes began to haul it into the city. Then the warriors leaped out, and the horn blew, and the army hurried up, and the town was taken after great slaughter. But a number escaped with their wives and children, and fled on to the Crimea, whence they were driven by the Russians. So they marched away along the sea to Spain, and bearing up through France, they stopped, and some stayed in the heart of France. They were the Bretons. The others came over in boats, and landed in England, and they were the first people settled in Great Britain. They were the Welsh.
So there you had our birds with bones.
Yep. Birds with legs. Birds with extremely fast running legs.
Yeah. That sort of reminded me a bit about some of those running birds we have. The ostrich, and there's another one in Australia, I think. They can be quite vicious.
Emu. I think they literally had a war against emus in Australia. And they lost.
Can't beat the birds.
Emus are apparently quite formidable. But it also reminds me of cassowaries, which I think are the most dangerous, classified as the most dangerous bird in the world. And I couldn't find these rows. I think they're a totally fictional bird. But they definitely remind me of cassowaries that will chase people and like, try and bump them right a bit. Scary.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they can't fly doesn't mean it's just silly.
Yeah.
Some of these running birds, these walking around birds, like, they'd be scary.
Yeah. I definitely don't want to encounter an emu.
Nope. I would nope out of there if I ever saw an emu.
Yeah.
Be like, the Australians lost a war against you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna back off really slowly.
Nice bird.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice large chicken thingy.
Yeah. Oh, there's a good little chicken.
Oh dear.
Okay, just to do some housekeeping, Ferocious Chihuahua is hosting us, so thank you very much. And he also donated 3 ice creams. Thank you for those. And I agree, subscribe monthly. So, a permanent member of our Spark family.
Slots just donated an ice cream as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I definitely found because I read that story as well and considered doing it, and it's definitely interesting, in particular considering the apparent origins of the English with because they were apparently from Troy as well, but took the detour from Rome.
Well, let's be the Britons, so it would fit. Of course, the Welsh would have the origin story from Troy, and it's quite interesting, really. Brutus of Troy said to come from Troy. The Welsh said to come from Troy, because the Welsh are Britons in the earliest sense of the word. You know how it says in that story that the Welsh were the first inhabitants of Britain. Well, that is kind of true. That is kind of true. Because when you look at the genetic map of Britain, when you break it down, genetically, the Welsh are Britons, as is most of the northwest of England. And getting further into the northeast as you go towards Scotland, so all along the border with Scotland, you really have Britons. And Saxon genetics are what's predominant in the south, except Cornwall. Cornwall is weird. Cornwall is weird in pretty much all circumstances. Anything that applies to the rest of Britain doesn't necessarily apply to Cornwall. And the northeast as well. You got Saxons. So south and northeast, you got Saxons, but again, they're really a lot less predominant, and the Briton influence goes further into the east as you get towards Scotland. Now, if you want to break that down, I did read the whole study about this, so I can try and link it on Twitter on the Gab for anyone who's interested. North Wales is really similar to the early settlers of Britain after the end of the last ice age, and Britain still would have been connected to Europe via a land bridge. In the south of Wales, there's something called the Llansca line, which is a linguistic barrier between the English speakers of southwest Pembrokeshire and the Welsh speakers further east. And that has also shown a genetic difference between those two people. So North Wales and South Wales on whole are genetically different, slightly genetically different, and South Wales seems to be split between the English speakers and the Welsh speakers, which is interesting. And it hasn't really changed like that for like about 1,500 years. You can still see these like distinct genetic groups. Like this study was of 2,000 people with 4 grandparents, all 4 grandparents from the local area. So you can see that these groups are still distinct. Which, yeah, then it was funny to see that that same study, titled Nation of Immigrants, which is like, yeah, not exactly. On the micro level, we're genetically different. We have mixed quite a lot, but it's hardly an example of integration, because it just shows that these genetically different groups, even after 1,500 years, still haven't mixed.
Yeah, I've
They still haven't totally integrated. Northerners and Southerners don't like each other. North and South Wales, I don't think they're too keen on one another, as far as I know.
Yeah, we have the same in Norway. Some of the borders we have internally go back to before Harald Hårfagre, when he united Norway. So some of the old borders are from the old kingdoms that was before that, and for example, on the west coast of southern Norway, there are 2 counties that are next to each other, and their dialect is very different. And people literally spoke their own dialect on with only a fence between them. They were neighbors and had their own dialects, and they hated each other. And that's all going back to being in different kingdoms. But I also heard of the so-called Welsh Pakis. It's not my term. It's not my term. I've heard it. They're basically Welsh people with slightly darker hair, and they hardly ever tan. So
that's weird. I mean, the only link I've ever heard between Wales and Pakistan myself is that when anybody tries to do a Welsh accent, it usually goes via Pakistan for some reason. Whenever we do a Welsh accent, usually, for some reason, ends up turning Indian. And that's just a well-known fact about trying to do a Welsh accent.
Yeah.
It will go Llandudno via Bombay.
Yeah. There was something that was around on internet a few years back, where someone typed in Dindu into Google Translate, and it came back as black man in Welsh. I actually tried it, and it actually did go back to that.
We're just using a Welsh word.
Yeah.
There you go. It's Welsh, people.
Yep. Just speaking Welsh, my man. Speaking of Google Translate,
I think that land bridge was Doggerland. Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, it was. Just a small other anecdote from what I assume are Google Translate. I saw something about one of the main propagandists in Israel for the vaccine and how that's going down there. The translation of the Hebrew for social distancing was social alienation, actually. And that was quite fitting, I think. Just had to
Huh. Yeah, it is.
just had to put it in there. As a little side note. But that genetic stuff sounded quite interesting, so I would definitely like to take a look at that link. So tweet it out.
Yeah, I'll try and find it again, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an interesting study. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly it's very funny to see it being used in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't even get on after 1,500 years. Come on now. Come on now.
But diversity is our strength, of course. Yeah.
Oh dear, oh dear. But yeah, I think it was picked up by a lot of mainstream news outlets, that study.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we have another story? We got one about animals.
Yeah.
Lots of animals.
Yeah, I just
all of them.
Yeah, all of them. I just have to say one thing. I do suspect we might have to do a show on the Trojans one day, because that's definitely something I would like to look more into. They seem to pop up everywhere.
The what?
So, the Trojans.
Oh, the Trojans, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the Trojans. Yeah, we should definitely do a show about Troy.
Yeah.
Troy is like a big flipping mystery. Everybody's like, yeah, we come from Troy.
Mm-hmm.
At least everyone in Britain. And I don't know if that's like trying to link oneself back to the classical world in terms of, revisionism, or, well, like Ash Logos was saying in his video, they seemed to, even at the time of the things that were happening at the time of the Romans, they seemed to take it very seriously that they were related, and they had no real reason to like the Romans because the Romans had just come and invaded them all.
Yeah. I did.
So very Troy thing seems like it might have some merit.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely think so. I do remember, I think it was a Red Ice show in their early days. I found them back in 2008. And if I remember correctly, they had on a guy who had taken the Iliad and with that long boat journey with a guy who wanted to get home again. And they took the description of the landscapes and tried to fit it into some geography. And according to him, it sounded like the coast of Norway, actually. Look more into that, but that might be an interesting one.
Huh.
So,
no, that does sound interesting.
Yeah, well, people, at least one ship was blown from Gibraltar to northern Norway, actually, back in the Middle Ages. So that was a Venetian prince who was on his way to France and got caught up in a hurricane and ended up in Norway, actually. So that must have been quite a wild trip.
Must have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Stories about animals tasting nice. Not this next one, no. Unless you like frog.
Yeah. Well, the French
Shall we see?
Perhaps it's a French guy who likes frog legs or something.
I don't think the paradox is French.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, let's have some animals.
The long-lived ancestors. The eagle of Guanabwe had long been married to his female, and by her had many children. She died, and he continued a long time a widower, but at length he proposed marriage with the owl of Cwm Cwmlwyd. but afraid of her being so young as to have children by her, and thereby degrade his own family, he first of all went to inquire about her age among the most aged of the world. Accordingly, he applied to the Stag of Redinfre, whom he found lying close to the trunk of an old oak, and requested to know the owl's age. "I have seen," said the stag, "this oak, an acorn, which is now fallen to the ground through age, without either bark or leaves, and never suffered any hurt or strain, except from my rubbing myself against it once a day after getting up on my legs, but I never remember to have seen the owl you mention, younger or older than she seems to be at this day. But there is one older than I am, and that is the salmon of Glenchriffon." The eagle then applied to the salmon for the age of the owl. The salmon answered, "I am as many years old as there are scales upon my skin, and particles of spawn within my belly, and yet I never saw the owl you mentioned but the same in appearance. But there is one older than I am, and that is the blackbird of Kilgree." The eagle next repaired to the blackbird of Kilgree, whom he found perched on a small stone, and inquired of him of the owl's age. "Dost thou see this stone upon which I sit?" said the blackbird, "which is now no bigger than what a man can carry in his hand? I have seen this very stone of such weight as to be sufficient load for 100 oxen to draw, which has suffered neither rubbing nor wearing, save that I rub my bill on it once every evening, and touch the tips of my wings on it every morning, when I expand them to fly. Yet I have not seen the owl, either older or younger than she appears to be at this day. But there is one who is older than I am, and that is the frog of Mochno Bog, and if he does not know her age, there is not a creature living that does know it." The eagle went last of all to the frog, and desired to know the owl's age. He answered, "I never ate anything but the dust from the spot which I inhabit, and that very sparingly. And dost thou see these great hills that surround and overawe this bog where I lie? They are formed only from the excrements of my body, since I have inhabited this place, yet I never remember to have seen the owl, but an old hag, making that hideous noise, to-hoo, to-hoo, always frightening the children in the neighbourhood." So the eagle of Gwenabwe, the stag of Redinfre, the salmon of Glenchriffon, the blackbird of Kilgree, the frog of Mochno Bog, and the owl of Cumcumlud are the oldest creatures in the whole world.
That was quite a lot of animals, and no
It
one was
was.
eaten, and the birds had bones.
They'd
Hmm.
be a bit difficult for them to fly without them.
Yeah, a bit. But
Yeah,
it definitely seems like that owl was quite old.
definitely. And also, interestingly, the mountains were frog poop.
Yeah.
So think about that the next time you're walking on mountains in Wales, if you happen to be in Wales.
Hmm.
Frog and Mochno Bog.
Yeah.
He made Snowdonia, apparently.
Moshe Finkelstein donated 4 lemons. Thank you very much. And Besot is in the house. Good to see you as always. And the
Hi, Besot.
Woodlander. The Woodlander is over on YouTube.
Yes.
Oh, we are on the front
Oh,
page,
JC.
apparently.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Hello, front page of D-Life.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just here telling some stories and
Yeah.
talking about St. David's Day.
Yeah.
So hello to any Welsh people.
Mm-hmm. Happy St. David's
Talking
Day
about-
tomorrow.
Yeah. But yeah, we just had a lot of a lot of animals in that story, and we learnt what noise a stag makes. I mean, a stag apparently makes that noise when he's trying to attract some lady deer. Apparently, he makes that noise there,
Yeah.
but it's mainly the main noise that I could find a stag making, to be honest.
Yeah. A few years back, sounded like there was a dog that had run away and was barking like mad and just running around barking.
Uh-huh.
And it turned out it was a deer. I was running around
Huh.
barking. It sounded like a dog. I think it went on for about an hour or something. I do think it was during mating season, so it might be barking at the ladies or something. But that was quite unexpected and definitely not the sound I was expecting from a deer.
Mm-hmm. No, it wouldn't be the sound I'd expect I expect a deer to make myself. Oh, Besot's like 60% Welsh.
Ah.
Can anyone beat Besot in terms of Welshness? Anyone more Welsh than that?
Maybe dual citizen.
That's a good percentage of Welsh.
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe dual citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean dual citizen can speak a little bit of Welsh apparently,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty cool. I wouldn't know where to start with learning that.
No, neither would I.
Yeah. The thing that story got me wondering is there actually eagles in Wales? And or should there actually be eagles in Wales? Are they native? And turns out that yes, there were eagles in Wales. Now you notice I'm using the past tense there. They are native to Britain. A handful of breeding pairs are surviving in southwest Scotland, and there are current efforts to restore breeding numbers by the South of Scotland Golden Eagle Project. And Northern Ireland also had a reintroduced population of golden eagles. But Wales lost the golden eagle in 1850 due to human persecution. And the last breeding pair bred in the remote mountains of Snowdonia, Gwynedd in North Wales. And it's been over 150 years since golden eagles last bred in Wales. And the land has changed a lot in that time. And there's still a lot of problems with human intervention being a problem and causes of regional extinctions and stuff like that. Like human direct persecution of wildlife has drastically decreased. But there's more issues with reduction of habitat and stuff like that. Now, there was a that was found unfortunately dead in December 2020. We don't know if it escaped from captivity, but it was around in Wales and it was found in a river in Powys. And yeah, after an examination, it found it had been shot at. It had been shot at before it died. So someone sees a flipping eagle and then takes a pot shot at it, which is very sad indeed. I certainly think that it's a massive shame that we don't have these a lot of these native species anymore. Like, we had much more, not just like birds of prey like golden eagles, but I think we used to have more wolves and boars and stuff like that. Of course, they can be dangerous. They can kill sheep and stuff, but we now have the technology to stop them from getting at livestock.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I do think Norway has been involved in reintroducing eagles. I'm not sure if that was in Britain, but
Mm.
I do think I remember years ago reading something about it, that they were capturing eagles and setting them free in a different country. Um, the sea eagle, I'm not sure of
Sea
the.
eagle.
It's
I didn't
probably
know there was one of those.
it's probably a different English name, but I don't know them. But the direct translation is sea eagle. Um, they live on the coast and feed from the sea, as the Norwegian name portends. But we also have the king eagle. That is more of an inland bird, and that is on the list of threatened animals over here. And it's illegal to hunt them and everything. My family has quite a few cabins, and there are king eagles near one of them. Actually, I saw one a few years back. I was
Oh, that's exciting.
yeah, I was watching some ducks because it's by a lake, and I was watching some ducks quite far out and through binoculars, and suddenly they all went crazy and started ducking underwater, but not in that streamlined way they usually do. It was
Oh.
quite funny to watch, but apparently they were panicking, and so I set my binoculars to the side, and over them circles an eagle, and later it glided out of my vision. It was one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen. It was
Wow.
truly majestic. But I do understand why the ducks were panicking, because they are on the menu.
Yeah, you would be if you were a duck.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh my god!
they're
What the no?
they're on everyone's
Help!
menu. I tried to feed the ducks. I had some leftover bread and everything, and went down to the shore, and
Yeah.
was going to be so nice to them and feed them, and they panicked and flew away.
Yeah.
So not like the
But
city
yeah.
ducks. But I did talk to some of the locals, and they do have poachers that goes for the nests. Um,
Oh.
so
Yeah.
that is definitely a problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, it
Mhm.
is. Yeah. But yeah, some of the wildlife you can actually still see in Wales, though, in terms of birds, is red kites. They were pushed to the edge of extinction, but that now they're back in Wales and in other places. But you can see them in Powys, Gilfach Farm or Gigrin Farm. And they do really spectacular aerials in the sky, and you can see ospreys. They're quite impressive birds of prey. You can also see Manx shearwaters, and there's an estimated like 316,000 breeding pairs of those on Skomer and Stockholm Islands. So that's cool. So those are birds that you definitely can see in Wales, and puffins as well. You can see puffins in Wales. So it's still quite a good place
Puffin
for bird watching.
Puffin is one of the most hilarious names I know.
I know.
Uh,
It's
it,
really
sou- it sounds like a cartoon or something.
yeah. I know. They're so cute. They're cute as well. They kind of look like a cartoon.
Yeah.
Dolphins are great. But yeah, there's certainly love Wales. Great wildlife, great scenery.
Yeah,
Absolutely do love Wales.
I've seen quite a few pictures from there, and it's definitely a place I'd like to see. And rumor has it
Yeah.
that it's quite similar to Norway, actually, in many ways. So that would be interesting to
Having seen
explore.
pictures of Norway, the landscapes are quite like a bit comparable, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I've not been to Norway, and I actually want to see Norway.
Yeah. Take a look at a
But
fjord.
you know, everybody always says Scandinavia is expensive.
It
That's
is.
what they always say in Britain
Yeah.
when you're trying to go on holiday to Scandinavia.
In particular, Norway, we
Yeah.
are very expensive, but you know,
Mm.
try to network a bit, and you can maybe get some accommodation that way. Or for those who would like to have it as cheap as possible, there are ecological farms that you can stay at for free as long as you
That's
work
cool.
for them. You have to help around and everything, but
Yeah.
they do leave enough time so that you can go around a bit and check it out. And some of them are very helpful as well.
That's quite similar with a few places, yeah.
Yeah, there's a network, international network. I met some Americans through that, so that might be
Oh,
an option for
nice.
those who want to do it as cheap as possible.
That is a cool option to keep in mind when we are actually allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah, there is that.
Who knows when at this point?
Yeah, that Dr. Cahill, she has started an organization that help people with advice for traveling, in how to not have the rules infringe on your personal rights and everything. So, Dr. Cahill has been able to fly without masks, for example, though there's been a lot of fighting in order to get there. So, and they're just getting started up. So, there are countermeasures to all that is happening now. We just have to keep our eyes open. And also, I would just like to mention Frode Midjord made me aware of this from Guide to Culture. At least, I'm not sure how this works for people in Britain right now, as they are not in the EU, but the Council of Europe. They actually carry quite a bit of weight, and they have released a statement with quite a few paragraphs in that, and this goes in particular for vaccine, that as long as you are under their so-called jurisdiction, they point out that you can't be forced to be vaccinated and you can't be discriminated against if you're not vaccinated. So
I think also certain rules in the UK would mandate that you are not forced per se as well to get it.
yeah, well,
Because certainly they have that somewhat written into the law.
yeah, well, do think we have to dig into every international law we can that pertains to this
Mm.
to get a proper legal defense against it. Because if if you can't have your
Yes.
life back if you're not vaccinated, if you then choose to take the vaccine, it's coerced. It's not by your own choice. So, and that is illegal in international law. Actually, the Nuremberg laws.
Exactly.
So, we have to keep those things in mind and not let it stop us too much. There's quite a bit
Yes.
coming out in.
That is true.
There's quite a bit coming out regarding that, including that fines and stuff like that in the UK. Not a single case that has been reported by the police have been valid. This is information from the prosecutors.
Mm.
So not a single case were legal. So know your rights, people.
Nope,
know
not
your
one.
rights.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
shall we do the chest? Let's do the chest.
Let's do the chesting.
Yeah.
I see you've done the chest feeding.
It's opening.
I'll probably repeat the chest feeding for quite a few weeks, just because I think it's funny.
The
Yeah.
chest feeding. Feed the chest.
Yeah, I do have somewhat of a particular sense of humor, so you just have to bear with me.
We seem to like that on this show. We seem to like anything that could possibly be misinterpreted.
Well, it's
I mean,
obvious.
I was at it with Debutius as well.
Which ended up as fabulous.
Fabulous Debutius.
Yeah, that's too much of a tongue twister for me.
I feel like that needs to be on a mug.
Something like that. That
So
should be
yeah.
on a mug.
Wait, Lynx, you got lemons again.
I did.
Eli was giving you the lemons on stream that you're on. At
Yeah.
1690 Spark. You got the lemons, and so did Euphemia Signy, Elliot Page, and Champlebear. Champlebear?
Champy Bear. Champy Bear. So, congratulations, everyone.
Yay.
I suppose that includes
Thank you for the
myself.
lemons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope everyone has a nice St. David's Day tomorrow. Well, it's probably not a big deal for most people, but if you didn't know it was, you can do a little something to mark it now. And I'll tweet out some recipes for Welsh rarebit and Barbriff, so you can indulge in some Welshness. Fruit for Barbriff has to be soaked in tea, so use the best quality tea for that.
Mm-hmm.
I know whose tea you could use for that.
Yeah. I haven't tasted it, but I hear it's good, so.
Bit of granny teas.
Yeah.
I think we've mentioned them quite a lot now. I'm just like, I'm gonna shill a tea. Not sponsored.
No, not sponsored.
Not sponsored. I wish though.
Yeah. Euphemia Signa donated 7 ice cream. Thank you very much, and 5 more.
Nice.
Thank you. So yeah, that was our Welsh evening.
We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. The stories should be up tomorrow, and as a bonus, I will most likely put up Merlin's Prophecy, which might be fun to try to dissect. it was quite intricate
Yes.
and with quite a few euphemisms, animals and everything. So it's one of those you can.
Prophecies. They never
Yeah.
just give it to you straight, do they?
No, they don't.
Always got to talk in riddles.
Yeah.
Your weekly thank you, ladies. Thank
Ah,
you very much
thank
for the
you.
diamond, I agree.
Yeah, thank you. Frozish Chihuahua gave a diamond earlier. I don't know if that was mentioned.
Oh, yay.
So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. So that's it for tonight. Those over in the States, have a wonderful Sunday. And enjoy the rest of it. And those in Europe, hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Yes. Good night. And goodbye.
Yeah.
And yeah, happy St. David's Day for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Goodbye, everyone.
Next show is actually a mystery show. We haven't decided on.
We haven't done on theme, no.
No,
We need
so
to talk about theme.
yeah. Glad you liked it, Euphemia Signa. See everyone later, and good night.
Bye.